Welcome back to PR After Hours. I'm your host, Alex Greenwood, bringing you your weekly cocktail of PR and marketing tips that will help you and your business. So how do you establish a personal brand? Well, we've got a great guest this week who's going to tell us all about it. Burton Kelso, the tech expert, is not only going to share his tips for building a brand in the news media and online, but also a few great tech tips too. So stay with us. After these messages, we'll meet Burton Kelso. Hello, listeners. It's me, Alex, from PR After Hours. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. And I wanted to talk to you just for a moment about the way I get this show right into your earbuds every week. It's because I use Anchor FM. Now, I've told you previously that I've been podcasting since 2006, back when we used stone knives and bear skins and a couple of Dixie cups and string. Anchor FM has really streamlined this and made it simpler for people who don't know the first thing about setting up a podcast or don't have, time to learn all the pro tools and stuff, because it's all right here. First thing it's important to know is it's free. There are certain tools that will allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. That's huge. Distribution is a big pain in the butt, to be honest with you, so it's really great Anchor FM can do that for you, and you're not paying hosting fees. That adds up every month. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started, and be sure to join me in the virtual cocktail lounge on PR After Hours. One of the key things we discuss here on PR After Hours is about how you brand your organization, your company, even yourself. And that's why I was really excited when I could get Burton Kelso on the show. Burton is the chief technology guy. He's got all kinds of things going on with his company, Integral, and he is all over the media, not just here in the Kansas City area, but across the country. He speaks. He has a great blog that's up for an award. He's doing all sorts of stuff, and I thought, man, I've got to get Burton on here. We've crossed paths a few times here locally, mostly at TV stations and gatherings, and I thought, this is the guy to talk to about sharing tips on how to create and maintain your personal brand. So welcome, Burton Kelso.
Hey, Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Doing all right. I see you're getting out and about on social media. That's the nature of your work. You basically have to with what you do, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because with any service business and at Integral, we do, on-site and remote tech support, but it's not about going in and fixing the technology. It's about helping people and, of course, building relationships. And it's that old adage, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So if you want people to do business with you, they definitely have to trust you. So getting on social media and interacting with people is a great way to build trust and, of course, try to enhance the lives of the people that you encounter. I mean, that's the whole purpose of it, I believe.
I think so. And I think, too, you're so ubiquitous, at least locally, and I'm sure in other parts of the country, as we discussed, or as I mentioned earlier, people develop a comfort level with you. They feel like they know you.
Yeah, that's part of the power of social media. I think one of the things that I try to do is to be a little bit transparent. I know some people with social media will try to basically advertise their business, talk about why they're the best. But what I try to do with social media is just basically tell my story. The ups, the downs, but definitely not too down, because you don't want people turned off. But I just let people know that you're a human being and that this is the experience that you're going through. And of course, making sure that you're entertaining your followers on social media, make sure that you're enlightening them and educating them. And that's what I try to do with my posts. And I think it's done well, because definitely, we get business from it. And of course, people definitely know who I am, and I get that good brand recognition.
You truly do. And just, we could take a quick step back. I'd love it if you could just briefly tell our listeners about what it is you do, a little bit about your history. And I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. I read somewhere that when you were a kid, you built one of your first computers.
Well, I was actually an adult when that happened, but
Oh, were you? I misread that, but still, even an adult building a computer. Come on.
right, yeah. So yeah, I grew up in the Kansas City area and graduated from high school and did some college, but I was more hands-on person. So in the early '90s, I got interested in computers in the aspect of just using them to play games, to be honest with you. And of course, I started with the Atari 2600 and the Commodore 64. So did some programming, but what I realized when I got out into the workforce, working for several chain computer stores, is that people didn't understand technology the way that I did, and it became frustrating, and it would definitely cause stress in the lives of individuals and business owners. So that's when I decided to embark and offer on-site tech support for homes and businesses alike, because especially in the early '90s, technology just changed so quickly, and so people weren't able to keep up with all the different brands of technology that were going on. You had Windows, you had Mac, you had all sorts of word processing programs. You back then you had a lack of accounting programs, and of course people were told that technology was supposed to make their lives easier, and it really wasn't. So I saw a need there to really help people out. And I just jumped on the opportunity, and here we are 27 years later.
You know, it's interesting too. There's kind of a stereotype. You talk about the frustration. You know, there's the old Saturday Night Live skit about the guy fixing the copy machine and all that, right? And
Right.
you really explode those myths, though. I mean, you or at least maybe it's not a myth, but you're not like that at all. What I love about you is you're so approachable, and
Yeah,
you could talk to people in language they understand.
right. And that's one of the things that we try to do at Integral is, I don't want the nerd in the basement going out on site or even remoting into someone's computer, because when you walk away from each service appointment, you want people to have a greater understanding of the technology that they use. I know one of the questions that we ask after appointments is, did the technician show you what you can do the next time so that you can fix the problem yourself? And that's important because people want to take a little bit more power when it comes to technology and be able to at least troubleshoot some of the minor stuff and not feel so stupid when they're using the computers and technology in their home or office.
You know, I always kind of do that when when I can't fix something. Like I have a WordPress site for my PR firm, and every time it seems like every time the theme updates, it crashes the whole site, and I can't figure. You know, it's just beyond my capability. I know you're not talking necessarily software here, but this is just a case in point. I finally found a company that fixes WordPress sites. You log on, you give them your login information, you say here's the problem. They say for X amount of bucks, we'll fix this, and they do it in like 10 minutes, and of course you can't help but feel a little like, oh crap, they fixed that in 10 minutes. But then again, it's like you say though. I mean, you guys are the experts, but the key here though is those folks, and definitely your folks, don't make people feel dumb about it. Which is, that alone, by the way, before we even get into talking about your personal brand and what you do, is a great branding lesson right there. Is having expertise is great, but it's like that old saying, people don't care what you know until they know that you care, and
Right.
they want that human interaction. So,
That's exactly right. I agree 100%, Alex.
well, so Burton, let's talk about this brand you have, because let's just say, okay, I've been off and on TV for this market 5 or 6 years. I just seem to just keep seeing you over and over. You're on TV and radio, as far as I know, and other places, way more than I've ever have been. And I'm just curious, how did that start with you? How did you start establishing the Burton Kelso brand and get yourself on TV and doing these appearances?
Well, it all starts with social media, Alex, which is kind of funny because I connected with Lauren Halifax on LinkedIn, and at the time I was just sending out invitation requests on LinkedIn, and I had personalized it, and we both were involved with the nonprofits, but at different angles. So I was shocked when she accepted my invitation, but it took about a year. Then I finally got a message from Lauren saying, "Hey, I love the stuff that you share on LinkedIn. Why don't you come on the Fox 4 Morning Show and share some of these tips?" So of course I agreed, and after a few months I was appearing on a regular basis. But then I got worried because I'm like, well, there's really no loyalty
Oh no.
with any of the television stations. You know that.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'm like, at any point, they could find another tech guy and start having them come on, and then I'll be on off TV. So then I had an opportunity to reach out to 41, which led to Better. Um, and of course, once I started learning how to pitch to the stations, I decided I needed to start pitching to some outside of the metro area to build a brand outside the metro. So then I started pitching to St. Joe and St. Louis, Ozarks, and of course, stations across the country as well. So that's basically how that journey got started. So, with the media, I noticed, there became a little bit more attention. People started thinking that, well, this is the expert. This guy's on TV all the time. So I'm thinking, well, this is probably a good way to generate the brand and build more business. So I just continue to show up whenever the stations ask, or whenever I come up with a good idea to pitch out. Because I think, with every business, there's some, we all have competition out there. So you always have to evolve your business in a way where you are standing out from your competition. And it can't be, I don't think it can be necessarily the awards that come out. It has to be from the public perspective, that you know what you're talking about, and the fact that you're in, mainstream media, that you're the expert of all things of whatever brand you're representing.
It's too trite to say perception is reality. I'm careful with that, but you do kind of make a point that once you started appearing, it became, you developed the perception that it's not just a perception, because it's true. You're very good at what you do. You're an expert, but it just became more proof of credibility, is what I'm hearing. You got that first great appearance, and then you just kind of invested in that and kept that going, and now you've learned the game. You know how to pitch a good idea. Like, I'm sure, and by the way, before we let you go, I'm going to ask you some tips about COVID and Zoom and all that stuff. But I imagine you just developed a good news sense. Is that fair? And you would call the producer and say, "Look, I've got this idea. I'd like to come on and talk about it." Which, if that's, and I think that's what I heard you say. And of course, but the good thing about that is, one thing I've learned is, as a PR person, is producers, reporters, editors love you if you can help them fill the news hole, as they call it. If you can fill a segment on a TV show with something valuable that people need to hear and see, they're going to love you and they're going to keep calling you. Sound right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think if you're wanting to get media attention, it doesn't matter if it's a podcast, radio or TV. You have to embrace the practice of what's called newsjacking. And that's, for those that are familiar with that term, that's basically taking a news story, a prominent news story, and just turning it in a way that you could share tips and tricks that pertain to your industry. So obviously you're not going to newsjack if there's a report about bad weather, unless you're in, say, I'm trying to think of the term for it, I guess, damage restoration, where you have to, like with the flooding that's going on recently, you've got people's basements that are flooding. So if you're in that industry, that would be a good way to newsjack, because it's flooding. You're able to help people restore, or maybe you're a plumber. You can go out, you can share tips and tricks to help people avoid whatever problems they face when there's flooding, whenever there's a problem. So I think that's very important. It's a good way to get on the media, because those producers for those shows are always looking for timely content to share to their viewers. So if you can provide that timely content, you're always going to be a good fit to go on TV, and not necessarily sell. You want to educate. I mean, that's the key. You definitely aren't going on to promote your business. You're basically sharing your expertise, or giving away part of the shop, as they say, right, in order to help the viewers, and then help to build your brand. So that when people think about, our business, when they think about technology, they think about PR, for your business, you're the first one that they contact.
Exactly. Now, you kind of touched on this, but if I could put you on the spot here, are there a few lessons you've learned over the years of dealing with the news media in particular, of things that maybe you shouldn't do? I think you've already said one thing, which is, don't basically if you're a square peg and they have a round hole, don't try to force it. Like, I've talked a little bit about that in previous episodes of this show about there's a lot of businesses that seem to want to kind of surf on COVID-19, but it's just not in their wheelhouse. They're just, you know what I'm saying? They're kind of contorting
Right.
themselves to make sure their message works with it, and it doesn't. So, are there some other ideas or just some other tips you might have for people of do's and don'ts to try to get your brand out there?
Well, when it comes to media brand, the first thing that you need to know is if a podcast or TV or radio calls, you always say yes. You make time to make that happen, because if you don't, they're just going to move on to the next person. But the main thing with PR, I think, in this day and age, it's all organic. So you want to avoid the sales pitch, because everyone's tired of being sold to.
Yeah.
You want to build your brand where you're helping people out, where you're sharing tips and tricks that are going to enhance the lives of other people. That's why we get on the internet, is because we want more information. And of course, we're getting on the internet now for entertainment too. But if you're avoiding the sales pitch and you're focusing on just helping people out in their day-to-day lives, I think that's the biggest thing that any brand can do. I know I get a ton of email, but a lot of the email is just sales stuff.
Yeah.
There's very rare that I get a blog or or just a newsletter that says, hey, here's some tips that'll help you do whatever. And I think you definitely need to tailor your business like that. And of course, you need to, I think you need to add some humor to it too. I mean, whatever industry you're in, if there's errors that you can laugh about that people deal with, definitely post it and just focus on telling your story and focus on just building those relationships with people. I mean, it's really important.
Burton, and that's the thing too. Without I'll use the dreaded authenticity word, but you are authentic, and what you said in the beginning here is that you share your life with people and who you are, ups and downs. And again, you don't obviously you don't want to put people off with your downs too much, but you're a real person. I'm the same way. I am the first to either on this show or even on TV. I've done this. I'll tell you about mistakes I've made, and I've always found that. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't tell people that I'm incompetent, but I will tell them that I've made some mistakes. People learn from mistakes, and I think people, frankly, like to hear about how other people have had mistakes and how they overcame them or corrected those situations. So I found that to be very useful. So I really, really like and respect how you're doing that with your brand. I think people can take a lot of good lessons from that. And by the way, folks, in the show notes, we're going to have links to everything with Burton, okay? His blog and his YouTube channel, all that stuff will be linked up in the show notes. So, Burton, I can't let you go until I get some free tech tips out of you, all right?
That's fine.
All of our listeners are, I would say all of them, practically all of them, are doing Zoom meetings, those types of things. But what's going on with like security with Zoom? Is there Zoom bombing and all this stuff?
Oh, I love talking about the Zoom bombing, because it's one of those instances where you see in the media that there's a big problem with the software. And I'll get to the Zoom bombing in a second, but it all boils down to the host and what the host is doing as far as setting up their Zoom meeting. So one of the funniest things that I ran into recently is that I was doing free Zoom webinars for a real estate organization out in California. So everything was going fine, and then one of their trainers got bombed. And if you don't know what Zoom bombing is, it's just basically when someone interrupts your Zoom meeting and they do disparaging stuff, like they may show pornographic images, they just may berate the host and the participants of the Zoom meeting. So this happened to a real estate trainer out in California. So then I get a message from the organization saying, well, if you don't use GoToMeeting or Zoom Webinar, then you can just pre-record your meetings and then send them to us. And I'm thinking, well, I was volunteering my time to do this. I'm not going to do an hour-long webinar to an empty audience and submit the video to you. I'm like, the problem's with your trainer. They didn't set their Zoom meeting up right, and that's why they got bombed. But no one listens to the tech guy, so we parted ways after I think 4 webinars. But the lesson to be learned with Zoom bombing is that if you're a host, you really need to take caution and make sure that you're protecting your Zoom meeting ID. I know Zoom allows you to utilize the same ID for each of your meetings, but you want to create a random meeting ID, and you want to only share it with the people that are going to participate with your Zoom meeting. So maybe you email them directly the Zoom meeting ID and the password, or you can have Zoom post to Facebook as well, and then just have people show up to a Zoom meeting that is showing up on your Facebook Live. But it's just one of those instances where it kind of got out of hand because it was stuff that people should have been doing all alone as far as their Zoom accounts and any of their online accounts. And that's set up two-factor authentication, make sure you're using a unique Zoom ID. Then, of course, as far as your Zoom account, make sure that the account has a different password than any other online account that you're using.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. What other tips are important to get across to people during this really awful time, since we're so very much tied to our technology, if not for our livelihoods, at least for our connection with other people and our entertainment? What other things are you seeing that you wanted to share with folks?
Well, check out your internet. There's a great website that you can go to called speedtest.net, where you can actually go in and check out what your internet upload and download speeds are. Obviously, with all this technology, you've got to have good internet, good fast internet, in order to Skype or Zoom or do any remote work, either for your own company or for a company that you're working for. But speedtest.net allows you to check what your internet speeds are, and then you can compare them to what speed you're actually paying for. So sometimes you may experience problems with your internet, and you can't tell if it's the website or if it's your internet provider. So if you go to Speedtest, check your speeds out, compare them with your ISP or your internet service provider. You can kind of begin the troubleshooting process of finding out if you're getting good internet. And if you're not, you might want to look into switching other options as far as internet providers are concerned. The other thing that if you're working remotely that you need to be concerned too is how robust is your Wi-Fi around your home? I mean, if you're working remotely, you may think that your internet sucks, but it could be in reality your wireless connection in that office that is probably down in the dungeon of your basement or up in the dungeon of your attic too, and it may be just too far from the wireless signal. So there are several tools that you can do. You could set up what's called a mesh network, and Google has their own mesh network. My personal favorite is what's called a power line adapter. So there's a company called TP-Link, and you can visit them at tp-link.com. They make a device that actually will send the internet signal through your power line of your house. Oh. So you basically plug one end near your router, and then you plug the other end near where you want the wireless signal to go. So basically, it sends the signal through your power lines of your home to the remote location, and then either you can choose to be wired or wireless, and then it will help you get a good, strong internet signal in your location.
You know, Burton, I wish I had consulted with you. When we got a new house a couple of years ago up north here in Kansas City, and we moved from Brookside, where a house was 100 years old, and, you know, those walls, there must be chicken wire and stuff in there because you can't get a signal. So
right.
We got here, and it's fine. It's a newer house, except it's kind of a weird multi-level. Mm-hmm. And we got in here, and things weren't reaching. And I have my office in my studio upstairs here, but then we have a basement, kind of a lounge area, and we have a living room. Anyway, so I talked to some folks, and they suggested the mesh. So we have the mesh, and it's better. It's definitely helped. But
right.
I love this TP thing you're talking about. This sounds great. Man,
Alex,
yeah,
I heard that turn in your voice when you said, "Yeah, we got the Google Mesh," and you paused. I'm like, I know. It's okay.
I see, and I mean those things, and they're not cheap, you know. I don't think. And so I feel, gosh darn it! Burton, I wish I'd known you better 2 years ago. I should have called you. Oh,
so
my goodness.
Let me ask you this, Alex, real quick. So, do you have Google Fiber?
Yes.
See, that's the challenge. So we had the same thing happen when we moved about a year ago. We've got a weird split-level house, and so we weren't getting robust internet anywhere. And so the challenge is that we had Spectrum. And Spectrum's cheap, and it was good fast speed, but the problem was where the router was coming in, we needed it on the other side of the house. And of course, Spectrum wasn't going to run new coax across our yard
Yeah.
or around our yard to put it to a different location. So Google was on the other side of the house. And so we went with it. And so when the guy showed up, he's got these little bubble looking things. I'm like, what's that? He's like, oh, we're going to set up a mesh network. And I'm like, nah, that ain't that ain't going to work. We ain't going with mesh. So eventually I ended up wiring internet and getting some range extenders. And so we have pretty good, robust internet. But I did start out with the TP-Link power line adapters, and it worked. It worked great. It wasn't Google speed, but it was, good enough for the rest of the family to stream videos and music. And I would highly recommend going with a TP-Link adapter as opposed to the mesh, because the mesh, like you said, I love that pause. I'm trying to see if I can imitate it. You're like, yeah, we got the mesh, but and then you pause.
So Burton, do you see? I am true to my word. I like to admit my mistakes.
Right.
I'm going to give that some thought. I mean, and I don't want to get into the sunk cost fallacy of, well, I already spent so much on the mesh that I don't even want to consider that. But the reason it became even more of an issue is my wife is basically now working from home, like a lot of us are. I already did, but she's now working from home. And then our daughter's home from school, and we're all on devices right now as I speak. And it's doing okay, but man, okay, you know what?
And wait till I throw the price to you, the TP-Link adapter. You'll love this.
You're gonna turn the knife on me, aren't you? All right, go ahead.
I am. So if you get the wired TP-Link power line adapters, they run about $40 at Micro Center, and if you decide to get the one that offers Wi-Fi, it's around $80. So you get a set of two.
Well, thank you, Burton, for that. Jeez,
that was a good knife turn, wasn't it?
See, folks, this is what I'm telling you. This is why I want to get Burton on the show, because not only does he know his stuff, he's freaking funny, and I do appreciate that. So, does it require like a smart guy like you to set that up?
No, you just plug it into your outlet. Like I said, you plug one into the outlet near the router, and then you plug the other in an outlet in the room where you want the internet, and then there's a button you push to pair them, and then like within a couple of seconds the lights turn green, and then you got internet. True story. There was a guy that I recently had to go out in the field and do work for. He had a printer that he wanted in a specific location, so we installed the TP-Link, and I think in 5 minutes he was able to print through over his network with the TP-Link adapter.
My wireless printer just works when it wants to, and I have a feeling that's part of the problem right there.
It's the mesh?
It's weird. It's here in the office right next to my router and everything, but it's weird. There's some kind of network issue. It's very frustrating. I always want to go Office Space on it, take it out in the field with a bat. I don't know if you saw that movie, but
yeah, of course. I have you can't see it. I've got the Office Space stapler.
Oh, you got the swing line? Oh my God.
Yeah, I got the swing line, the red one. You gotta next time on TV, you gotta look for it. It's like it's somewhere on my shelf.
Well, you and I have something in common too. You drink out of a Batman mug, so I have a feeling you're a fan, and I am as well. I see that often, I think.
Right. One other thing I was going to tell you about your printer, since and we can talk about more tech stuff, but with printers, either they work or they don't work. So with your wireless printer next to your router, and it ain't working all the time, usually means that the wireless portion has gone out in the printer. So if you've got like a Ethernet cable, you could still print quote unquote wirelessly, but you could run the Ethernet cable from your router to the printer and still have wireless printing.
Well, I have a Sonos system for music and stuff, which is
right.
Which is the same thing. It's great when it works, but every time they update the app or something, I got to haul it up here and plug it into the Ethernet port and reset. Oh, yeah. You know what I ought to do? I ought to call the technology expert and ask him to come over and just give me a bid on all this work I need done here. I think that's what I need to do, Burton. And I'm a man of my word. There's going to come a time when I'm going to be like, all right, I'm going to fix this stuff. I can't take this any longer. But hey, Burton, real quick, if you got one more tip, because I know I've kept you too long already, but I'm so enjoying the conversation. Is there one more tip you have or any other information you want to impart?
Yeah, there is. But one thing you brought up a Batman quote. You said, "I'm a man of my word," and that's kind of a Joker quote from The Dark Knight. Remember?
Yes, I know. You know,
People will die tonight. I'm a man of my
oh man,
word.
my word. You
That's
know,
what you
my
said.
my second favorite is the Joker quote that I can't quote here, but I'll start it for you. You'll know the rest. But he's in there with all the gangsters, and he's like, "What happened?" And then
Yeah, that's right.
and now the listeners are going, "Oh my
Yeah,
God, what are we
yeah,
listening
we
to?"
can clean it up and say, yeah, did your courage drop off?
Oh man,
That's basically what he's saying. You guys are chicken. You
exactly.
know,
Chicken
got to fight
salad.
Batman.
Yeah.
So another tip that I was going to part as far as technology is concerned is back up. I mean, that's probably the most important thing to
Yes.
do when as far as data is concerned. And so I think people get confused with backing up. So you have your online cloud storage services like OneDrive and Dropbox and Google Drive. Now, the whole purpose of your cloud storage services is that it allows you to work anywhere in the world. So if you put a file up in Dropbox or in OneDrive, that basically means if you go to Addis Ababa, you can access that file easily. But you want to embrace what's considered cloud backup services. So there's services like Carbonite and Backblaze that will automatically back up your data and give you redundancy, which is the most important thing. Because if something were to happen with your cloud storage files in OneDrive or Dropbox, like if you got hit with ransomware, then all those files would be ruined.
Oh wow.
But if you back up with Carbonite, um, then you've got at least 30 days of backup that you can go to restore it. And the good thing about Carbonite and Backblaze is that they're both cheap. So for about 83, 84 bucks a year, you get unlimited backup of like your computers in Windows and Mac. So it doesn't really matter what you use. It'll automatically back up that information and store it in the cloud.
Is it hard to set up?
No, you just download the file and they both give you a 15-day trial. Of course, you give them credit card information in that trial period, but
Sure.
once the trial's over and it works on your system, if you keep it installed, it'll just automatically back up your stuff anytime you're connected to the internet.
So I don't have to mess with it. I just fire and forget, right? Just get it
Yeah,
going.
that's it. Yeah, and that's the thing you want to do with backups because the challenge is as most businesses are moving to more of a remote footprint, people are working on their laptops because they don't want to be stuck in the same room all the time. So if you have a laptop, the challenge is that you aren't going to plug in that external hard drive all the time. Now, if you have a desktop, then of course it's always running. But with the external on a laptop, who's going to plug it in? No one's going to do that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So doing a cloud backup system like Carbonite or Backblaze is the smart choice to go because obviously as soon as you power up your laptop, you're going to connect to the internet. It's going to start backing up, and then you don't have to worry about your files being backed up again. Because
Well,
I mean, one of the most frequent calls we get is, "Hey, I lost my data. Can you retrieve it?" And in most instances, it's like, "Yeah, you got about a couple of $1,000 because that's how much it's going to cost to retrieve your data."
oh man. So I think what I'm hearing here is there are a lot of low-cost things that you can pay me now or you can pay me later, and you'd rather pay now. So you got a lot of low-cost options to not only improve your connectivity at home,
Right?
but also ways to protect yourself. That's not too expensive. I've heard of Carbonite before. A lot of podcasts. They used to do a lot of podcast advertising, as I recall. I haven't heard about them in a few years, but thanks for reminding me about that, Burton, because I've got a kind of a patchwork, I think, of different cloud services that and. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not 100% certain how it works, and if I really have to find something, it's excruciating. So I don't know. That's one last thing I'll ask you real quick. Do people ever
What?
call you like people like me who just are just they don't have necessarily an emergency, but they want you to maybe give them advice or consult with them, paid consulting that is, to tell them, okay, here's what you're doing, here's what I recommend you do. Do you do that kind of work?
Yes, we sure do. And the question I was going to ask you is, so what cloud services are you using currently right now?
Well, I use Mac, so I got the the Mac, the Apple stuff.
Right.
That one's there. I think with Google you get some stuff, cloud, and there's just a couple others. But you know what? I've never really paid enough attention to how it works. I know that my stuff goes up in the cloud, and I can find it eventually. But I would just like something that's a little more seamless and easy to do. I've got a Mac laptop and I've got a Mac desktop. As you know, before we started recording, I had an issue with one, had to switch to the other. But what I do like is, at least with the way these computers work, is like if something I do on this one, like when I get done with this sound file for this interview, it'll also be on the desktop.
Right.
So that's cool. But I don't know. I'm probably doing something wrong.
Well, I will tell you this. So with Mac users, you can use iCloud backup as long as you pay Apple their money.
Right.
But the challenge is that usually with iCloud backup, Apple only really wants to back up like write and numbers and Keynote. And so you have to be careful. If you're like a Mac user who's using Microsoft Office, then you might want to graduate to like, Google Drive. But you can even use OneDrive on a Mac, which is good. And so if you're wanting an automatic backup system that kind of integrates with everything on a Mac, then probably iCloud would be the best feature. Or if you're using Google Drive, you can download on Windows and Mac a program called Google Backup and Sync. And what it will do is it'll synchronize your folders on your Mac and back them up to your Google Drive account. So you might want to look into that as well.
I will do that. So, Burton, really quickly here, Integral. You are the technology expert at Integral, and you have all kinds of services. Do you mind sharing just kind of give me the list that all our listeners can hear, and tell us what services you offer? And also, before you do that, I assume you can help people anywhere remotely with certain things, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So, at Integral, we offer on-site and remote tech support for homes and businesses. So it doesn't matter if you've got Windows or Macintosh problems, if you've got problems with your smartphone, your tablet, your printer, your routers, anything that connects to the internet, we can definitely help. And we also help with some smart home stuff too, like Amazon and Google Home and Ring doorbells and Nest thermostats and all that. So basically we can help with all things tech that are used in the home and the office. Yeah,
because I've got some of that Nest stuff, which we bought the house and it was here, right? And I kind of get it, I guess, but I get emails saying you have so many leafs this month, which is nice. But anyway, Burton, I think I'm going to have to soon call you and maybe when things calm down, maybe we can get together and we can just maybe do the whole laundry list here, and you can tell me what I need to do, and maybe you can help me fix some things and improve things, because that's what you do best, Burton. You make technology simpler for people like me, and that is a huge service, and bless you for doing it. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you with a technology question, or perhaps to hire you?
Well, you can call the office and talk to my office manager, Lynn, or any members of my team at 888-256-0829. If you want to try to reach out to me, I'm Burton Kelso on all things social media, or if you want to reach out to the company in general, our tag on social media is Call Integral Now.
Yeah, I like that. And I will have all these links in the show notes. Burton Kelso, the technology expert, the branding expert, I might add, and the guy who makes me laugh at my own silliness for not knowing things that I should know. Thanks for being here in the virtual lounge on PR After Hours.
No problem, Alex, and thanks for being a man of your word.
Oh, you know what that means? Looks like it's last call here at your virtual lounge for PR news, views, and interviews. Don't forget, you can ask me a question anytime. You can do it through our Twitter account, which is @HoursPR, or even better, you can send me a message vocally. I would love to hear your voice, and I'll answer it on the show. There's a link in the show notes. All you have to do is sign up through Anchor FM. It's free, doesn't take long. And you record your message, I get the message, I will play your audio, just give me your first name and the city you live in, and then I will answer the question to the best of my ability right here on the show. Don't forget to, if you're enjoying this podcast, you can support it and help increase the frequency and value of the show. Just consider being a sponsor for your brand or your agency or just yourself, because you're like, I like this show. or just drop a few coins in the virtual tip jar. Either way, there's links in the show notes. Please check that out. All of that, of course, being in the show notes where you're listening right now or at prafterhours.com. I see that they're turning up the lights. Last call is over, and I've got to clean up this virtual lounge. And until next time, I'm Alex Greenwood, and you've been listening to PR After Hours on Anchor FM.